Hey, what's up, friends? It's your boy Mush King here. I hope that you're enjoying the content that's on the CWF network. We're trying to bring really dope content to you in really big ways, but in really small pieces. So if you want to support the Conversation with Friends network, please support our sponsors in the links below. The links are always in our description boxes. Please support Happy Socks, craftbeerclub.com. Please support the sponsors and support us, and also look out for some of the things we have going on. Now let's get into this show.
Hey, it's me, Eb Diaz. Catch me every other Wednesday for an all-new episode of Talk Therapy, only on the CWF network, where we hit you with big content in small pieces.
Yeah, that happened. What is up, y'all? What's happening? It is your personal Snapple Cat back with another random fact for another installment of Yeah, That Happened. Before I begin, be sure to follow us wherever you can. Be sure to support us. We want to hear you, and we also want to be heard. So follow us on Instagram at CWFP_, on Facebook at Convo with Friends, or on SoundCloud.com/CWF Podcast. On the iTunes network, look up Conversations with Friends, and wherever you can, share our voices. And be sure to leave your comments, because we want to hear your voices too. Everyone loves to be heard, so friends, let's make it happen. All right, let's jump into today's topic. You guys want to hear a super real Snapple fact, though? Today we're talking about Central Park, before Central Park was Central Park. So, if you ever take a stroll through New York City Central Park, you will find that none of the roads are actually straight. All of them have some kind of twist or turn to them. And the only one that's actually straight is this long strip called the Mall. And that's where you have all the little busts of all the famous writers throughout history. So, any of those who doubted that I was an actual Snapple Cat, there you go. You get you a little fact. But today I'm talking to you guys about Central Park before it was Central Park. We are flying back 200 years, back to 1825, and I'm going to let you know a little bit about Seneca Village. Today that's happening. Two recently emancipated slaves named Andrew Williams and Epiphany Davis became the first African Americans to purchase land in the area that now became Seneca Village. They bought land and it stretched from West 82nd to West 85th Street between 7th and 8th Avenues. And you can kind of figure out where that is in Manhattan, because Manhattan is now a grid. So you can see where they purchased their land. And that land, along with the help of the AME Zion Church, who purchased nearby land as well, became the base for Seneca Village. Now, it took a couple of years before Seneca Village actually started to thrive and grow and prosper, but it did. And that was because it was, close to a whole bunch of, I guess you could call it, amenities. The Hudson River wasn't too far, and in the 1800s, that was, a big fishing opportunity. There were natural water resources in the 1800s when you left 14th Street and went further up into what is now like the Upper West Side, Harlem, and things like that. It was just forest. It was just farmland. So it was an incredibly desirable area. And so by 1855, when a census was taken, it was found that Seneca Village was home to approximately 250 people and had 70 houses. It was an incredibly rural life, but it was an incredibly important life for recently emancipated African Americans who can come to Seneca Village and be able to purchase land. And purchasing land was incredibly important because in 1821, New York State made it a rule that you needed to own land and show proof of that land ownership for at least 3 years in order to be able to vote. So a lot of recently emancipated African Americans would come to Seneca Village and be able to purchase their own land and start their own lives, and then be able to, vote and become part of their democratic process. So boom, right? As time goes on in the 1830s and 40s, Seneca Village is growing. Seneca Village is thriving, and it starts to include more people than just African Americans. It becomes inclusive, because why would you want to, stop anyone else from thriving? So more Irish and German immigrants who are starting to come to America are also finding, land and a home and a community within Seneca Village. So Seneca Village was kind of one of the pioneering communities for African Americans to prove, and not even prove, but show that we as a people can grow and thrive and be inclusive on our own. And, there are facts to prove that. By 1855, before Seneca Village became Central Park, there were at least 2,000 African Americans in New York City, and only 100 were eligible to vote, right? Of those 100 that were eligible to vote out of the 2,000, 10% of that 100 lived in Seneca Village, right? So 10% of your African American eligible voters came from Seneca Village. Seneca Village provided that opportunity to people, right? 50% of African Americans own their own land in Seneca Village. Half of them own their own land, right? And several of the property owners who lived through Seneca Village were also part of the abolitionist movement. So there are a lot of different hats being worn by many different people in the community. And we can see how much public interest came into Seneca Village because it was thriving so well. So now we get to 1855, which is right around the time that last census was taken. A couple of years earlier, in 1853, a couple of people started, a group, a coalition, and they wanted to build a central park throughout New York City to emulate the kind of parks that they, found throughout Europe. And so they wanted that tract of land to come through Seneca Village. And this is where it gets, pretty shady and kind of, crazy. There's this thing called eminent domain. Now, if you don't know what eminent domain is, that is the government's power to come through and take your land if it's for, the use of the public. Regardless of whether or not the land is public or private, they're taking the land for public use, right? So that's kind of what went down if you live in New York City, or if you're familiar with the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. That's kind of what happened when they were building the Barclays Center. They took a whole bunch of land around the area and bought it up through the use of eminent domain. So regardless of whether or not how long you've been paying your property taxes and your land taxes and your mortgage or whatever, the government can still say, hey, we actually own the land. You may own the building, you may own whatever, but we own the land, so we can come through and take it. That's what happened with Seneca Village. They came through, they paid them off, they bought them out, and they moved them to other places throughout New York City. So that kind of dispersed, the people who lived in Seneca Village. And unfortunately, as they were kicked out, they never really brought themselves back together as they did when they were in Seneca Village, because that's where, they started. They had 30 plus years to build, a community, to build a sense of environment, to build a place where they can be. And, they were bought out to build, what is now one of New York City's best landmarks, Central Park. So let me know how you feel about, this new piece of history that you're finding out. Let me know if you knew about this before. Let me know if you knew the history of Central Park, because if you do walk through, you can find plaques that will let you know about Seneca Village. Tell me in the comments below using hashtag #YeahThatHappened or hashtag YTH how you feel about eminent domain and the government being able to snatch up your property regardless of whether or not, you've been there a year or 30 years. I'm Corde, highlighting moments in history. And be sure to catch me on my Instagram at CORDE._, where you can leave me all of your voices that I want to hear. You can leave me anything that you want to tell me, any topic you might want me to cover, and I will definitely listen to you. This is Yeah That Happened on the CWF network, where we are bringing you big content in small pieces. Later, y'all.
Follow us on Instagram at CWFP_. This is Conversations with Friends Network. Okay, bye.